Hi Suraj, thank you so much for taking our time for this interview. May we request you to please share your journey, your story in your own words?
Sure, I'll do that. And thank you for having me, Dikshita. Okay, so my name is Suraj Warrior. I have a bachelor's in economics and a master's in financial economics.
Mhm.
Since 2018, I've been working at Reliance Industries as a data scientist.
All right.
So I primarily work within the risk and financial analytics space
Mhm.
as a project manager. So that's what I've been up to work-wise.
Right.
And sometime in September of 2020,
Mhm.
I decided that while I enjoy working in analytics, I wanted to explore some other opportunities.
Okay.
And as we all know, an MBA essentially helps you pivot into other industries or functions. So I guess that's the genesis of my MBA journey.
All right. So, in your opinion, what are a few factors or actions you took that made all the difference?
Sure. So let me talk a little bit about three factors that I think helped me in my application process.
All
So
right.
firstly, I started early. And I think that's really important. You need to give yourself enough time to prepare for the GMAT, to work on your applications, etc. So I think round one deadlines for most schools tend to be around the months of September, October. So try and give yourself at least 6 to 9 months preparation time. So again, preferably 9 months, but at least 6 months. So I think that's the first factor that helped me starting early. Second, I talked to a bunch of different people who had been through this journey. So fortunately for me, my manager has an MBA from ISB Hyderabad. So he was able to give me a lot of guidance
Mhm.
and he even helped me connect with certain other people. So all of that helped as well. So that's another suggestion that I would give everyone. So in case you don't have that connection, try and reach out to different people, people who have been through this journey because it's going to be a very long process. So you need that focus, consistency. So it helps to talk to people. And the third thing that helped me was taking the services of an admissions consultant. So as you know, I hired Experts Global and that worked out very well for me. Now, this is really important. So let me spend some time here. What should you expect from an admissions consultant
Mhm.
versus what you should not be expecting from an admissions consultant? So let me start with the former. So what can you expect? So one, while I said that you need to reach out to people to get guidance, advice, there's a lot of information out there. So a good admissions consultant will help you distill all the useful information so that you're not really confused by conflicting ideas. So that's one thing you should expect from an admissions consultant. Two, they essentially help you structure the whole process. So while you're doing this, what you realize is the GMAT preparation and the application journey, all of it is very unstructured. So an admissions consultant should help you create a nice structure. So to give an example with Experts Global, you guys shared an Excel sheet with I think 30, 40 different steps with clear timelines. So that kind of simplifies the whole process drastically. So I think at a broad level, these are two expectations you should have from an admissions consultant. Now, equally important, what you should not expect from an admissions consultant. One, they cannot transform you into someone who can magically get into Harvard or MIT or whatever your B school, your dream school is, right? At the end of the day, it's all about your history, your academic achievements, work experience, your accomplishments, etc. No one can change that. Having said that, what they can do is they can help bring out the qualities that are important for the admissions committee. So I
Mhm.
think that's where you need to kind of rationalize your expectations. The second thing you should not really expect is that your work is going to somehow reduce. That's not going to happen. You need to put in as much or more effort when you take the services of an admissions consultant. All they can do is provide a neat little structure for you.
Right.
So having said that, I do understand a lot of people decide to do the whole thing on their own. That's fine as well. But my only suggestion would be please create some kind of a structure for yourself.
Mhm.
So I guess these are three things that helped me. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, this is amazing. And it's really nice how you've put forward your points about what a person can do and what an aspirant must take into consideration before taking the services. So, with the benefit of hindsight, what are a few mistakes you believe you committed in the process?
Sure. So I can think of one big mistake that I made. So a lot of these schools during your application, they ask you, have you attended any of our information sessions? And in some cases, they'll ask you the date you attended it or who did you speak to. Now, unfortunately, I hadn't attended any of these sessions because I got all the information I wanted from the school's website. But looking back, that wasn't a really smart move on my part. See, the reason is MBA is extremely competitive. The moment they see something like, okay, this candidate hasn't really attended any of our information sessions, it may give a slightly negative impression. I'm not saying they're going to reject your candidature, but then you need to do whatever's in your power to, put your best foot forward. So
Right.
I think that's one thing I missed out.
Okay. So you're going back to your GMAT prep phase. What were the main resources that you used, and what tips would you give to the future GMAT aspirants regarding that?
Sure. So slightly long answer, but so at a very high level, you need to ensure that you use very high quality resources.
Right.
So I'll talk about some of the resources I used.
Mhm.
While I can attest to their quality, by no means is this an exhaustive list. I'm sure there are other resources as well. So with that out of the way, let me talk a little bit about some of the resources I use. So firstly, official guide. Do all the questions from the official guide. That is going to be your Bible. That's very important. So I used Magoosh. So I like their service. They offered it at a competitive rate. So that's my second resource. Then for quant, you can use Manhattan Prep's books or their videos. Again, super helpful.
Mhm.
For verbal, for the critical reasoning section, I used this book called Critical Reasoning Bible by, I think, PowerScore. That was extremely useful. I enjoyed reading the book. And there's another book for sentence correction by Manhattan Prep.
Mhm.
And you can also find some useful videos on quant by this guy named Ron Purewall. They're
Okay.
very old, but then I found them really helpful. They're called Thursdays by Ron or something like that.
All
So I
right.
think some of the resources that I used for my GMAT preparation, so they were helpful. And the second part of your question, some suggestions, right?
Right.
So I've kind of jotted down four main suggestions that I can give. So firstly, don't go by any rigid timelines that someone else prescribes for you. So when you talk to people, what they typically say is take 2-3 months ka preparation. That's the amount you need to prepare for GMAT. Again, it's not really set in stone. It's largely a function of your experience with standardized tests, your familiarity with the material in GMAT. So for example, someone may say, I spent 1 month preparing for GMAT, I scored very well, but maybe the person spent the last 1 year preparing for CAT. You don't know. So that's really important. So take how much ever time you need. So that's going to be my number one suggestion, which is why it helps to start early. So that's one. Two, you're preparing for GMAT, you're not preparing for CAT. Now, this is really important. What I mean by that is I've seen a lot of third-party test prep providers give you CAT level quant questions, and then they tell you the official guide is not representative of the difficulty of the actual GMAT exam. That's simply not true. Don't go by that. You're preparing for GMAT, you're not preparing for CAT. So that's going to be a number two suggestion. Number three, understanding is not binary. So the sense that we have typically is I've read something, I either understand it or I don't understand it. That's not really accurate. There are layers to understanding. Often when you think you understand something, you can probe deeper and find some blind spots. And what I've found is the best way to deepen your understanding is to either A, teach others. That always helps to explain concepts to someone else. If you don't have someone like that, make up an imaginary friend. I don't know, do whatever you have to.
All right.
Take the official guide questions,
Mhm.
Google them, look at GMAT Club or the different solutions for the same problem.
Mhm.
That helps you look at the same problem from multiple perspectives. And I think that in turn deepens your understanding of a concept. That's my third suggestion.
All right.
And my final suggestion would be maybe work a little bit on your mindset. Don't look at GMAT prep
Mhm.
and the whole application process as a hurdle. Instead, look at it as an opportunity to learn and to grow. I think that definitely helped me. And one final point is keep things in perspective. So I read this the other day. You had this consultant saying person XYZ got into INSEAD with an average score of 700. The thing is 700 is by no means an average score, right? You need to kind of keep things in perspective. So I understand that given if you're an Indian male engineer, even a score of 760, which is a 99th percentile, can seem average. But please keep things in perspective. Even a score of 700 is the 88th percentile. So I think these are some broad suggestions I can give about that.
Wow, this is really inspiring. And I'm sure all your suggestions are going to be very helpful to a lot of students in their
Hope so.
journey to success. So, what would you like to say about your experience and learnings from managing the application timeline?
So I don't have a lot to say about this. The only thing I'll say is your GMAT prep, your application process, and your interview process as well.
Hmm?
Each of these three things is very unstructured. Try and make it as structured as you can. And obviously now there are obvious things you need to do: stay committed, stay focused, be consistent. I think that's a given. So this is my broad theme. Make it as structured as possible.
All right. Okay. So, would you like to describe your interview experience with the B schools?
Yeah, sure. So here, let me again make three broad points here. So firstly, be prepared, practice as much as you can,
Mhm.
use an admissions consultant or on your own, find 40, 50 different questions that the interviewer or the admissions committee is likely to ask you. Then practice answering those questions, or at least create some kind of a template for the answers in your head.
All
The
right.
idea is this: while you don't want the interviewer to think that you've memorized answers, at the same time, you don't want to be thinking while you're talking or use, I think they're called filler words. That doesn't look good, right? So that's going to be my first advice. The
Mm-hmm.
second advice, again, I'm borrowing this idea from you guys from Experts Global, which is there are two things that any interviewer is going to look at. One, are you capable enough? Two, are you interested in the school? So all your answers should somehow incorporate these two aspects. So that's going to be a number two suggestion. And three, be ready for the interviewer to ask probing questions. So
Mm-hmm.
what I mean by that is, okay, so I'll give you an example. So this interviewer asked me, what's the main challenge or challenges that your industry is facing? I work in data science, and one challenge we face is that there's a lack of people with cross-functional experience, people who have experience of the domain and an understanding of statistical algorithms. So that's the challenge we face. The next question was, how has your presence helped in tackling that challenge? Fortunately, I had an answer prepared for that as well. So they will most likely dig deeper. So be prepared for that as well. So
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be my suggestion for the interviews.
All right. Okay. So, according to you, what are a few common mistakes that you would advise all the MBA applicants to avoid?
So what we have covered right now, they kind of also do talk a little bit about this kind of mistakes people could make. So one thing would be, I'm guessing, 2, 3 months being really rigid, not giving yourself enough time, or maybe a flawed mindset. Again, about the mindset thing. While changing your mindset, having that kind of a positive mindset is not necessarily going to improve your scores or get you into your dream school. I think it's going to make you a little less miserable during the entire process. So I think that's another advantage of having the right mindset. And again, not talking to enough people. That's another thing that people kind of make a mistake on. So while I think that the factors are largely going to be common for everyone, the
Mm-hmm.
weights that are given to different factors will be subjective. It's going to vary from individual to individual. The first factor is this. So post MBA, you may want to change your geography, your industry, or function. A
Mm-hmm.
good rule of thumb is to keep at least one thing constant. So for instance, I may want to work in India, but change both my industry and function.
Mm-hmm.
I may want to go to the US or abroad,
Right.
but keep my industry the same and change my function. Keep at least one thing constant. Now, having said that, I have met people who have managed to change all three. What we're talking about is odds or probability. So that's the first thing you would want to keep in mind. Second, do you see yourself working in India or abroad? So if you don't like the work culture in India, you think you want to go abroad, then I think your answer is fairly straightforward what you would want to do. Third is, how important is brand value to you? So when you make a choice between, say, an excellent school in India and a decent school abroad, or a decent school in India, excellent school abroad, how do you weight the brand value? Again, there's another school of thought which says that at the end of the day, you're doing an MBA for the learning, brand value should not matter. I understand that, but then again, it's for the individual to decide. The next factor would be the peer group. So obviously, if you go abroad, you will have access to people from different countries, cultures, life experiences, etc.
Yeah.
How important is that to you? The fifth factor would be understand the differences in placement process in India versus abroad. There are differences. Try and understand what they are. And finally, do a worst case scenario analysis. So again, the worst case would probably be you do an MBA, you don't get a job, but maybe let's not be that dire. So after an MBA, everyone has some expectation of their salaries, right? And typically what people do is they look at the median salary of a school. Now, again, we tend to be biased here. So all of us think we are above average. So we naturally gravitate to the median. But it's always helpful to maybe look at a range. So a lot of schools, they give their median score and they give a range. So for example, I'm just throwing some numbers. Say the median salary is 100K.
Mm-hmm.
The lowest salary is 50K. It goes all the way to 140K. Assume that you get 50K. What is your life going to look like at that stage? There will be certain EMIs you would have to pay, certain standard of living you need to maintain, plan accordingly. So I think those are broadly my suggestions, some things I would want to look at. Yeah.
Wow, your suggestions are really good, and your journey too has been very inspiring. So, what would be your final message to all the viewers watching this video?
Give yourself enough time. A lot of people underestimate the time it will take to prepare for the GMAT, to prepare for the application, to prepare for the interview. Don't make that mistake. And two would be plan for contingencies, because you never know when things can go wrong. I mean, look at the COVID situation. So plan for contingencies as much as you can. So I think that'll be my parting advice.
Okay, this was really amazing. Thank you so much for giving us your time, and all the best for your future. We really look forward to knowing more about your success stories in the future as well.
Thank you, Dikshita.
Thank you. Take care.